Welcome, everyone. We're all in relatively the same place today. And I can tell that Rob is ready with his Sergeant at Arms duty. So take it away, Rob.
Thank you, Madam President. If everyone would please mute themselves and focus. Actually,
You should be able to now.
Okay, thank you. Focus on my screen. Please stand and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Back to you, Madam President.
Why, thank you. And I don't know if anyone has a joke, but I heard one at the UK conference and I wanted to share it. Why did the Scarecrow get an award? Anyone? Anyone? He was outstanding in his field. Okay.
Maybe you have to be awake for 22 hours to think that's funny.
Ouch, burn. That's fair, Lloyd. All right, our Toastmaster tonight, I believe, is Ms. Kathleen McNulty. Is that correct? Ta-da, ta-da. I'm passing the torch to you, Ms. Kathleen.
That is correct. Thank you. I don't see any guests that we will be introducing since Lucas is officially a member, right, Lucas? My job as Toastmaster is to do introductions. I'll be introducing our speakers. We have two fabulous speakers today, and introducing our evaluator, Dean, who is coming from, I assume, the snowy wilds of Winthrop to join us, but we'll hear a report on that later. I am to call for a joke of the day. Anyone else have a joke of the day? All right. I brought one too. A nice, short and sweet one. It's a religious joke. And the Lord said unto John, "Come forth, and you will receive eternal life." But John came fifth and won the toaster. That's what I got out of church service this week. Today, our subject is Thanksgiving and giving thanks. To have just a few remarks before I introduce our general evaluator, Dean. I thought a little bit about this topic today of giving thanks, especially on Thanksgiving, of course. I reached a conclusion that Thanksgiving is not really the day for giving thanks. Every other day is. And Thanksgiving is a day for celebrating all the things that you have either acquired or been given, or your gifts or whatever it is. No more of that silly around the table on Thanksgiving dinner. What are you grateful for? Well, we all suck up to the brothers and sisters or the aunt. It's, oh, I'm so grateful for my family. For me, Thanksgiving is all about cooking and eating. I do a lot of cooking. My family is from the Midwest. They moved to the East Coast, just my parents, so just my nuclear family. We never had any other relatives to celebrate Thanksgiving with. They were all too far away. Back in the days of the horse and buggy, when it was too far, you just didn't jump on a plane and go visit your relatives at Thanksgiving. We would have the occasional co-worker of my dad that might straggle in, but otherwise it was just family. I never had those big, family dinners with 20 or 30 people until I moved to Portland, Oregon, where we knew no one, but we had kids who were in their 8s, 9s, 10s, in those age groups. Every Thanksgiving, we invited all of the other families over to our house, and they would all bring something. The last year, we had 35 people. We would set up these tables zigzag through the dining room, living room, so everybody could be at the same table. I didn't have to cook very much. Someone brought the turkey. Someone brought what they called heart attack mashed potatoes. Both of them are now deceased, so I presume it was aptly named. They were delicious though. Thanksgiving for me, food, cooking and eating, cleaning up. It's my great pleasure now to move on and introduce our general evaluator today, Dean Kurth. Tell us what's going on in Winthrop, Dean.
Well, we've had a great early season snow, so I've been out skiing most days trying to whip my old body into shape. And I was out today, but I'm getting there. It always takes a couple of weeks. And tonight, I am thankful for an outstanding evaluation team. I have two very experienced evaluators that will evaluate the speeches. The first of which is Ron Slaybaugh, who will be evaluating Mary Cyrie's speech. So Ron, if you could tell us a little bit about Mary's speech.
Sure. Well, according to my notes here, Mary is going to be completing her first speech in Toastmasters. This is another icebreaker. Mary is speaking in the visionary communications path. Like all icebreakers, it will be 4 to 6 minutes, and I will get back to the group towards the end with my opinions on how Mary did. Back to you, Dean.
Thank you, Ron. Our second evaluator is Lloyd Smith, who will be evaluating Jackie's speech. You want to tell us a bit about what you'll be evaluating? Please, Lloyd.
Thank you, Dean. Jackie is working in the engaging humor path, and she is working on a speech called Share Your Sense of Humor. The purpose, as it says here in the evaluation form, the purpose of this project is to begin developing a collection of humorous stories and to present a speech that includes humor. The member completing this project is working to add humor to a speech through anecdotes and stories. The speech should not be a report on the contents of Know Your Humor project, which, trust me, would not be funny at all. Speech length is 5 to 7 minutes.
Thank you, Lloyd. And it looks like we're in need of a timer. And I've forgotten who, okay, Vicki. Vicki, please tell us about your timing duties.
Oh, thank you so much. So I will be timing the speeches, table topics, and evaluations. And my timing cards are pretty well just boring, straight old green, yellow, and red. For Mary's speech, it'll be 4, 5, and 6. For Jackie's, it is 5, 6, and 7. Our table topics will be 1 to 2 minutes, 1, 1.5, and 2. And for our evaluators, which are Ron and Lloyd, 2, 2.5, and 3. And I will be giving my report at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. The next person on my team is the grammarian who will introduce the word of the day, Pat Whitfield.
Yes, and I've brought with me my assistant, Chloe. So Chloe will be very helpful in giving her evaluation as well. She's very honest. I will be looking to see that there is no abuse of the English language, that you all speak with elegance and articulateness. The word of the day should not be surprising, since the theme of our meeting tonight is Thanksgiving and giving thanks. The word of the day is gratitude. Gratitude for people, for life experiences, for things, for successes, for what you may have learned from failures. But the word tonight is gratitude.
That's a great word. Thank you. And the final member of the evaluation team is the counter, who will be looking for speech fillers, Lucas Hedke.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. This is a role that I am particularly looking forward to filling, as it's something that I need to work on. Personally, the purpose of the counter is to note words and sounds that are used as a crutch or pause filler by anyone who speaks. During the meeting, I will listen for overused words, including and, well, but, so, like, you know, or other repetitious words. I will also listen for filler sounds, including like I just said. I will also note when a speaker reports a word or phrase such as I, or this means. At the end of the meeting, I will report the number of times that each speaker used these expressions. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Back to you.
Thank you, Lucas. At this point, I'll return the control of the meeting to our Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. You do have a great team indeed. I particularly expect a lot from Chloe. I think we should make her our timer. It is my pleasure now to introduce our first speaker. Mary Cyree is the first speaker, and she is a DTM. So she has her credentials from Toastmasters, and we all are very familiar with her speeches. They're always something to look forward to. Here is her introduction. Fear is a funny thing. A small dose of fear can help us focus. An overdose of fear can cripple. Handling fear is a skill best learned with a sense of humor and fun. Tonight's first speaker, Mary Cyree, will relate her experience with handling fear in scary situation. Please welcome Mary delivering her speech entitled, I Fear and I Obey.
Do something every day that scares you. I heard somebody say that old chestnut in one of our recent meetings, and it got me thinking about fear. I joined Toastmasters 12 years ago, and I have to say, my first 4 speeches were horrifying. But then I learned to manage my fear. It was survival, frankly. And some 100-odd speeches later, I still get a little scared before a speech. The fear never goes away. But after all, think about it. What's the worst that can happen in a speech? You forget a line, you look at your notes, not that big of a deal. But fear can help. Fear makes me aware of my environment. I pay acute attention to details. And I think that healthy fear can lead to high performance. Fellow Toastmasters, public speaking isn't the only time that I faced a fear and learned to manage it. Tonight, I'm going to share a different story of my life when I faced a real fear. My husband's birthday gift for my 40th birthday was a surprise trip to Maui. I was thrilled. I'd never been to Hawaii and I'd never been anywhere tropical. There's no better place to be in the month of February than Hawaii. The beaches, the shopping, the food, the volcano, there's so much to do. And for me, everything was a first. A few days into the trip, my husband talked me into going snorkeling. I wasn't enthused about it, and I'll tell you why. I'm a weak swimmer. I didn't even learn how to swim until I got to college and I took beginning swimming. And it turns out that I'm not buoyant. I don't float, I sink. And I never got the rhythm of breathing when swimming. So for me, swimming was never fun. It's a life skill that I needed, but I never liked the open water. I'm afraid of getting exhausted and going under. But here I was in Hawaii, so I said yes. We got on a 6-pack snorkel boat, and all our gear was provided, including the wetsuit. Our first snorkel was on a shallow reef. It was probably 20, 25 feet deep. I'd never been in warm water. I'd never been in clear water. I couldn't believe that I could see the bottom and the marine life. I saw a jellyfish the size of a grocery bag. There were striped fish and spotted fish, red fish, blue fish. Every fish was a new fish. I think that this was just about the most fun a girl can have in a wetsuit. Speaking of that wetsuit, I was buoyant because of it. I could float. This was fun. Next, the dive master took us to a wall. You'll snorkel along the wall, he said, and you'll see a lot of sea life over there, but don't forget to look out into the open water because that's where the big fish are. And he was right. Right away, I saw a school of yellow-tailed jackfish. And below them, hard to see, but there, a float of tuna. My moment of truth came when I saw the biggest sea creature of all. No, it wasn't a shark. It was scuba divers. About 40 feet below me were a group of divers shining their dive light on the wall, looking for cool stuff. A voice inside me said, "That's where I want to be." I was no longer going to be happy up on the surface of the water. I wanted to be where those guys were. And 4 months later, my husband John and I were both open water certified scuba divers. Me, the girl who fears open water. But getting certified was scary. To earn certification, you must complete 4 open water dives in cold, murky Puget Sound. Those 4 dives were horrifying, just like my first 4 speeches. But I did it and I passed. To abate my fear, we joined a dive club where we would have more opportunities to dive and we could learn from experienced divers. Over the next 10 years, I logged 200 scuba dives in both cold water and in warm water. But no matter how many dives I logged, I still got a little scared before every dive. I listened to my fear and I obeyed what my fear told me. After all, in scuba diving, what's the worst that can happen? You can die. My fear made me aware of my underwater environment. I paid attention to details while preparing for the dive and absolutely during the dive. And I always went with a buddy. I faced my fears and I ended up having the time of my life. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mary. As usual, a great storyteller. I had just one brief comment and then we'll take our minute to give you our evaluations. I used to believe, I've been told, they would call it an old wives' tale, but I don't think you can use that term anymore, that people who could easily float in water had a lot of body fat. So if you're not buoyant, you should be proud of that. Timer, can we have 1 minute to write our comments to Mary? And we can do that through the chat.
1 minute.
Thank you. I was busy typing away. I am delighted to introduce our next speaker, who is probably our soon-to-be DTM. I'm not sure exactly where you are, Jackie, but you are on a path that is like rocketing you there. We'll have to talk about that later. I'm curious. This introduction is short and sweet. Sometimes wisdom comes from unexpected places. Here is Jackie Graybill presenting her speech, Out of the Mouths of Toddlers.
They all stood around him and looked at him expectantly. My sisters and I gave each other side eyes, knowing glances. We knew what was coming next. My little brother was 3 years old and he opened his favorite book, which happened to be The Big Hungry Bear and the Ripe Red Strawberry. Our guests that were over for dinner had been told that my 3-year-old brother could read this book and they wanted to see for themselves. He opened the first page and read it perfectly. They opened their eyes in amazement, and he did it again and again. And with confidence, he finished the book and they said, I can't believe he can read and he's only 3. Except for the fact that he couldn't read. He was just really great at memorizing. And from my brother and that red ripe strawberry and the big hungry bear, I learned to fake it till you make it. I have quite a few nieces and nephews, and one of them is named Gemma, Gemma with a J. When she was 3, actually this is this year, she is 3. She was working on potty training with my sister. And this was quite an ordeal. It took up a lot of time during the day. And one day, my sister told us what happened. Little Gemma had done her job and she was so excited. And she gingerly got off the pot and she peered down and she said, goodbye, poopies, I love you. And from Gemma, I've learned sometimes there are poopy people in your life and you just have to wish them well and flush them down the toilet of your life. Get rid of them. The third story I have for you is about another 3-year-old. This is Gemma's sister, Felicity. Felicity was 3 years old. And my sister is very religious. She once said to me, I just have to make sure that they know all about God and Jesus. And what if I'm not a good enough mom? What if I don't read enough to them? What if they don't have a relationship with Jesus because of me? And this is a big thing for my sister. So she would read Bible stories all the time to her girls. And she would give them the opportunity to read back. Every night she would read to them and she would hand them the little book of Bible stories and have them read back to her, incorporating all the stories and things that might come into their heads, crazy things, funny things, and it was a fun little exercise. I got to spend some time at their house last year. And Joy said, oh, Jackie, do you want to read with Felicity? And I said, sure. Okay, which one do you want me to read? And she said, oh, no. Felicity is going to read to you. And I said, okay, this should be very fun. And she started reading and she went off and she created this story and created that story. And she was so creative. But my favorite part was when she got to the story of Jonah and the whale. Does anybody know the story of Jonah and the whale? Yes, Jonah gets swallowed up by the whale. She got to the part in the story, and she said, and God sent the pig to swallow up Jonah. And I got this picture in my head of a pig swallowing up poor little Jonah and contorting, and it was very, very funny in the moment. And I realized there is room for creativity in our lives. Not only can pigs fly, but pigs can swallow up people that need to apparently be taught a lesson. We need to have creativity and excitement and gratitude and all of these qualities that children can teach us with their innocence and their curiosity and their senses of humor. I find them hysterical, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. That was wonderful. 3 lessons learned. Fake it till you make it. There are poopy people, and we should tell them goodbye. That's my favorite. And there's always room for creativity. To admit, and we'll get your 1 minute here in just a minute. When you started on the Jonah and the whale thing, I don't know why I thought you were going to go into like an eating disorder story, but I was happy with where you went. Can we get 1 minute to give our comments in a private chat to Jackie Graybill?
One minute.
Thank you, Madam Timekeeper. Checking my agenda. Thank you for giving me a moment to do that. Our next area of entertainment, Ian Adams is going to be leading us in our table topics. Ian, welcome. Take it away.
Thank you, Madam. I forgot the title of your role tonight, Madam Toastmaster. Goodness.
Thank you, Madam.
Once again, Lloyd has given us a great topic for the evening. When I looked at this one, and actually I looked at this topic the night that Lloyd sent the agenda out, which was a record for me. I'd never looked at one of our agendas that early. And I thought to myself, I'm going to have a whole bunch of great prepared questions for the evening. I found myself tonight at 5 o'clock thinking, wow, I better generate some questions. I'm the table topics master tonight. I was quickly looking as the meeting was getting going and noticed that everybody tonight has a speaking role. So I won't unfortunately be able to focus on the folks that don't have a role. We're all talking. So what I'll do tonight instead is just try and focus on the folks that have the more minor roles, if you can call it that. The first question I have is to note that we're all made up differently, or just every one of us, we're all different inside. We all handle situations differently. I, for one, handle or don't handle receiving thanks very well. I get a little bit embarrassed or uncomfortable when I receive thanks. And I don't know why that is. I just am that way. Dean, do you enjoy being thanked for your actions, or would you rather just move on to the next task?
I feel both. I genuinely appreciate receiving thanks, but like you, I feel a little uncomfortable. And I've often puzzled over that, and I'm really not sure why that is. Perhaps it's a lack of confidence. Perhaps it's my somewhat humble nature. But I do feel that way. And I have learned that the best response to that, if I can't think of anything else, is to simply say, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And depending on what I'm being thanked for, I might elaborate a little bit on that. Sometimes I've been in a leadership position and someone will thank me for that. And I'll say, yeah, it was a lot of work, but it seems to have worked out well, or maybe it didn't. And I would offer that advice to anybody, is if you can't think of anything else, just say, thank you. I appreciate your gratitude. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. That was a great response. One of the fun things, and there's a zillion fun things about having young kids, but one of the fun things I love about having kids, and again, mine are 10 and 8 right now, is that we get all kinds of school-age art. Turkeys that are made out of cutouts of your hands, posters that are colored with leaves that are found out in the yard, and all kinds of different imaginable art. I don't even know how to describe it. Things that teachers come up with, they're very creative. They end up all over our house. And this year, one of my favorite things that we got to take part in, because we're homeschooling the kids due to COVID, is helping to work through some of these art projects and helping to fulfill some of the requirements of the, not so much art, but holiday related projects. And this year, my favorite one has been this mason jar that we decorated just with a simple band around it that literally says notes of gratitude. What our task is every day to take a little teeny tiny piece of paper and write down something that you're grateful for. And the end goal is that on Thanksgiving Day, we're going to dump this jar out and read the things that we're thankful for. I can't wait to hear what my kids are thankful for, because I know that they're going to have different things they're thankful for than I will or my wife will. And it'll give us just a little glimpse inside of what they are thinking this time of year. Vicki, I know you've got kids. Do you have any memorable holiday art projects, specifically Thanksgiving art projects, or projects that you did with your kids?
Thank you. Rob, will you do the timing for me? Thank you. I have had many projects that have come home from my children and my grandchildren, and each of them hold a special place in my heart. My one son, when he was probably in first grade, which was probably over 20 years ago, made a spoon holder out of clay, and they did all of the things that they need to do to make it work. And I still have that. And it's just one of those things. And I wish I could have kept all of their artwork because it brought about great memories. But when you have so many children and so many artwork, you can't keep everything. And that's why I love now that we have digital cameras and we can take pictures of them to remember them, but still holding on to them is really memorable. But what really works is glitter. I don't know how many of you have kids that brought home projects with glitter, but I will tell you what, I probably still have glitter on some stuff that my oldest son, who is now almost 30 years old, brought home, because glitter is just one of those things that keep on giving no matter what. And if you ever have a kid come home and they have like a spot of glitter and you just can't get it off, and once you get that off, you get another. Glitter for me is just the ultimate fun thing. And that is one thing that I have gratitude for, is art projects. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Vicki. Your story about glitter reminds me, slightly off topic here, but when we moved into our house, we had this little tub of glitter, and my brother-in-law, being a bit of a jokester, said, "Welcome to your new home," and he dumped a little glitter out in the kitchen. We're still finding glitter in places. It's been almost a year. Clearly, this year being an extraordinarily strange year, we could not have a table topics without talking about how COVID is going to impact us. And this year, how's COVID going to impact our holidays? Kathleen, I'd like to know how COVID is going to impact your Thanksgiving turkey dinner this year.
Thank you for asking, Ian. I've already taken my COVID test. I had it this weekend because I was so anxious over a cold I had. I was afraid to cook for Thanksgiving. I went and had my COVID test and it was negative, thankfully. I felt like I really had cleared a hurdle in some ways. Now that meant that I could cook for everyone, and everyone is only going to be, there'll be 4 of us. So that'll be quite a bit different, but now I can cook for everyone. But then on the other hand, I can cook for everyone. I was almost off the hook. I was thinking about where we could order carry out. Sorry, I can't cook this year, have COVID. We're going to have to order from Visconti's. COVID is changing our holiday in some ways, but I don't feel like it's super serious. We're going to have fewer people there. We won't get to see our daughter. We have a daughter who's disabled. She's their house is pretty much in quarantine. We won't get to see her. That's a big difference. My other 2 boys will be around. You know, Steve and I will be here. We'll cook a whole bunch of food that we won't be able to eat in 2 weeks. It'll take us 30 minutes to eat it all. So similar to a normal Thanksgiving in that regard. A little smaller in size is the main difference. I should take an opportunity to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving as I close out and say, not much difference here. Planning to have a great time, eat lots of food, and be thankful.
Thanks, Kathleen. Sounds like you have plenty to be thankful for. And I hope the best for your family. Thank you for that meeting-wide thanks. I'm thankful for lots of things. For instance, this morning I was at Les Schwab, 7:30. I was the first one at the door, actually at 7 a.m. They opened the door at 7:30, and by 8 o'clock, I was driving my truck away with all 4 of my snow tires changed, and I even bought a new trailer tire. That's a pretty trivial thing to be thankful for, but having seen the lines there the last week, I thought I'm going to be here for a while. Looked at my calendar and thought, well, I can take care of this conference call while I'm sitting in the chair at Les Schwab. I can take care of that conference call. I can check my email. Fortunately, I didn't have to do any of that. I was able to recover my whole day because I got up early enough and took care of what needed to be done. That reminded me of how there's so many different things on so many different levels that we can be thankful for. Little trivial things like that to great big things like knowing that we can keep our disabled daughter safe by just wishing them a Thanksgiving like you'll be doing this year, Kathleen, and keeping her family safe in quarantine. Lucas, I'd like to know what you're thankful for this year, given the fact that there's an endless array of things that we can all be thankful for.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. I think that I'm most thankful for good health in my family. Thankfully, nobody has been affected too much by COVID, and it has been awesome to be able to be connected with those family members more. And it's even family members that I hadn't talked to in a long time that I was able to reach out to, and it's really brought us together. As strange as that sounds, having a pandemic can, I think, connect people and make them reach out when you wouldn't have normally talked to them. So I'm thankful for that. I'm also thankful for my dog, Kiku. He's just turned 7 months old, and I'm especially thankful for him because he's helped me stay happy through all these weird times and all the ups and downs that have happened to all of us these last few months. And it's just been awesome because even when things are weird and life is bizarre, I get to come home to my dog and he wiggles his little butt and he is just so excited to see me. And I'm just thankful for those little pieces of pure joy in my life. And yeah, I'm very thankful for that. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thanks, Lucas. Our pets are definitely some of the things that we should all be really thinking about and being thankful for this year, because all they want is for us to be happy, which is evident by the fact that when we come home and they wiggle, most dogs, mine just lays flat on his bed anymore. He's pretty old and retired, but he used to be like all good dogs are and super happy when you get home and just wanted to sit there and make sure that you had a smile on your face. And I'm eternally thankful for all the memories that all my pets, past and current, have given me. One of the things that comes to mind when I think about Thanksgiving is this image that's ingrained in my head from who knows where and who knows why. But when I picture Thanksgiving, I picture this long table out in a field with this amazing feast, and the surrounding atmosphere is mid-autumn. The grasses are gray and tan and brown, and the deciduous trees are abundant with vibrant colors. And around this table sits pilgrims with tall hats and bonnets and Native Americans in their buckskin clothes. They're all sitting shoulder to shoulder and eating this marvelous feast. I don't know where this vision comes from, but it's been with me my whole life. It's clearly of something I colored when I was a kid in grade school. Rob, I'd like to know what you think Thanksgiving looks like, the first Thanksgiving specifically looks like when you think of the first Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. As you were describing that long table with people sitting around, it reminded me of my ancestors. My ancestors were Norwegians and Swedes, and they all sat around a big long table and drank ale and mead and tore the turkey legs off of the turkey and ate with their hands and wiped their hands on their clothes. That's the vision I have when I think of the first Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving to me, though, it's a time of gratitude. However, it's also a time, ever since I was 15 years old, to spend time with my friends drinking beer or having a family meal with my family or watching football on TV. Those things have changed now. I still enjoy the occasional beer. I can't have Thanksgiving with my family, I don't want to watch football because usually it's the Cowboys and they suck this year. The only thing I was really looking forward to was the Cougars beating the Huskies in the Apple Cup. But now I'm not going to get to see that either. So I think, Mr. Table Topics Master, I'm going to go have a beer. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you, Rob. At this point, we are up against our time, and I'd like to turn it back over to our Toastmaster, Kathleen, to take us through to the end of the evening.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. Wonderful job, great questions, and lots of great speeches from our participants. I heard about a lot of wonderful parents and parenting on here, people who were making crafts with their kids and reading to them, and it made me feel like a really trash parent. I can remember when my kid, my middle one, was quite young, maybe 9 or something, and I'm reading to him from a book, but in one hand I've got my martini. I experienced a lot of gratitude that they survived my parenting. Time for us now to move on to our general evaluation section, and I'm going to turn this back over again to Dean, our general evaluator. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you. I want to express my gratitude for the great speeches and the table topics. And we'll jump right into the evaluation with Ron Slaybaugh's evaluation of Mary Syree's speech. Take it away, Ron.
Thank you, Dean. Mary, Mary, Mary. I have evaluated so many of your speeches. When Ian put his hand up earlier and he was drawing the turkey with the hand, I'll bet you I'd have to go on to another hand. We're probably up close to 8 or 10 of Mary's speeches that I've had the pleasure to be able to evaluate. And they're wonderful. I'd like to start off with what I'll just refer to as the mechanics. And those are, of course, I like how you're dressed. I love the color of your outfit. The dark crimson is my absolute favorite color. Mary always stands up in her speeches and has really mastered positioning herself appropriately within the frame and having that good eye contact with all of us, even though she can't necessarily see all of us in her room. Does a good job with that. The hand gestures and multiple different shapes of the hands. At one point, there's a little bit of this and moving hands out this way, one hand at a time, putting her head, moving her head up closer to the screen in between hands at one point. It all added value to the speech, in my opinion. Transitions were very clear. Speech was very clear. I think the audience looked very engaged throughout the presentation. Overall, very good. I'd like to move on to topic. I like how it started, how the introduction started with a sentence along the lines of, do something every day that scares you. So that got folks' attention. And for me, for some reason, I thought about that Peter principle, that is something about us all being promoted to the point of our incompetence. I don't know why I thought about that, but Mary went on with a short introduction to, of course, just set up the story about going to Maui and the scuba diving in Maui. And the introduction was appropriate. It was the appropriate length. And I liked in this particular case, she used one of the tools that doesn't fit in every speech, but it certainly did in this one, which is to just address the fellow Toastmasters that clearly let us know that she was moving on to the body of the speech. Then we got to hear this really wonderful story. Many folks here have probably been to Hawaii. I actually haven't, but to describe the crystal clear water, something that we do take for granted, having Lake Chelan right up here to the north of us, but some folks have never seen that sort of thing. And I understand the waters of Hawaii or Maui are absolutely fabulous. Very clear descriptions of everything seen underwater. The one comment that I'd like to share is when to describe the largest things underwater being the other divers, not necessarily creatures, not jellyfish the size of a garbage bag, but the other divers. Describe them as being, what, 40 feet underwater looking for stuff on a wall. As descriptive as the rest of the speech was, I would encourage you, Mary, to come up with something a little bit better than just stuff. But afterwards, a good transition into the conclusion, I felt, which was the body there in Maui was talking about just, you spoke how wonderful Maui was, but then we got back to fear. So I think that the conclusion tied back to the introduction and just the fear, and to some degree how you got over that by taking these scuba diving classes. And then at one point you also mentioned why you should be scared, because this is something that can kill you. And overall, pretty good. I liked it. It was an excellent speech, nice to listen to, very well put together, very well organized. Thank you much. And now back to you, Sir General Evaluator Dean.
Thank you, Ron. The next part is to have Lloyd Smith evaluate Jackie's speech. Go ahead, Lloyd.
Thank you, Dean. This was an interesting speech again. Well, I'll just use the structure that they use on their evaluation form here. What did you excel at? You excelled at what you typically excel at. Things like facial expression, gestures, vocal variety, your presence in the room, that sort of thing. There's an expression that people in the movie and TV industry use, that the camera likes you, and it does like you. On Saturday, when you were doing your presentation at the club officer training, there were numerous people who said something like that. I'm not sure they were thinking those words, but that's what they were getting at. In that, you are very, very fortunate, because in this Zoom thing, videoed speeches are quite different from in-person speeches, and you're lucky enough that you look good on both of them. Now, what you may want to work on. It's obvious you're tired. In fact, to me, you look like you're right on the edge of just keeling over. And that makes a certain amount of sense, because you just spent 22 hours on a plane coming from England and got here, what, 2-3 hours ago. And I think that had an effect on your speech. I'm not sure how much you really worked on this speech, to tell you the honest truth. Now, I'm not going to ask you to say that, but the issue with the speech that I have was its narrative structure. Okay, this was a story, and that was what the assignment was. And the narrative structure you used was to have the 3 lessons, the 3 parts to the speech. Now, there's nothing wrong with having 3 parts. In fact, there's psychological research that shows that humans respond to groups of 3. And that's why so many narrative speeches you'll hear are set up that way. It's the way I always set up my narrative contest speeches. However, the 3 parts needed to develop one theme. And what you had were 3 episodes or 3 anecdotes that were related, in that there were little kids saying unusual things that seemed to have a little more significance, but they really didn't develop exactly the same theme. Now, luckily, your delivery was entertaining enough that would have been easy to not notice. And in other words, if need be, you can fake it really, really well. And that's also a skill that's well worth having. I'm not kidding about that. I mean, if you need to fake it and can, you're in good stead, as opposed to needing to fake it and not being able to do so. To challenge yourself. This might seem like an odd challenge, but to challenge yourself, I would say that you need to evaluate more speeches. That's something you haven't really done a lot of in the club. The reason for that is, I remember several years ago, the guy who finished second in the final round of the International Speech Contest, during his contestant interview, he was asked, what is the best way to become a better speaker? And his immediate response was to evaluate more speeches. And the reason is, when you're just listening to a speech, what you tend to think about is whether you liked it or not, which is okay, but trivial. Whereas if you're evaluating a speech, you have to figure out what worked and what did not work. And if you do that enough, then it tends to come over to apply to your own speaking. So that would be my challenge, to do more speech evaluations. All in all, though, I thought it was an entertaining speech. It's supposed to be entertaining, and it was. It's supposed to have some humor in it, and it did. I thought it satisfied the assignment pretty much perfectly. Back to you, Dean.
Thank you, Lloyd. Next part of the evaluation is to hear about from the timer on the timer's report. How long did everyone speak? Vicki, take it away.
Thank you. Mary, your speech was 6 minutes, 20 seconds. Jackie, 5 minutes, 49. For table topics, Dean, you came in at 1:15. I was at 1:37. Kathleen, 1:55. Lucas, 1:27. Rob, 1:40. Our evaluators, Ron, 4:06. Lloyd, 3:44. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. Next, I'd like to hear from Pat on the grammarian's report and the word usage of the word of the day. Pat.
First of all, Chloe was very impressed with how articulate the group was. There were very few malapropisms and strange pronunciations and things like that, although there were a few. Ron, ing still needs polishing. I heard puttin', being, and taken, which should have been putting, being, and taking. Ian, instead of going to, I heard gonna have, gonna be. So you might want to polish that up just a little bit. In terms of the speakers, the main speakers, there was some wonderful, colorful language. Fake it until you make it. Flush people down the toilet of your life. What an interesting metaphor that was. In terms of Mary's, she used, when she was talking about the fear, she used a phrase, abate my fear. I liked that use of language, that particular verb, abate my fear. And she also began with the concept of do something every day that scares you. I think that's really good advice, and that was memorable. In terms of the use of the word of the day, Rob used it once, Dean used it once, Vicki used it once, and I'm going to give Lucas credit because Lucas talked about being grateful, and grateful is close to gratitude. The word that seemed to prevail was thankful. So poor gratitude got pushed to the side for thankful, but the essence and the spirit of the idea was the same. And as I said, Chloe was very impressed with all of you. Very articulate people, everyone speaking tonight. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Pat. Now let's hear from Lucas on fillers and ahs. Lucas, let us know how we did.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. And Pat, thank you as well for the credit. I do appreciate that. So overall, we were pretty clean. Vicki, you didn't have any slip-ups. Jackie, no slip-ups that I noted. Pat, I had one and that was it. Otherwise, clean. Rob, no slip-ups. Mary, no slip-ups. Ian, I had one and one Ron, I didn't have anything. Lloyd was clean. Dean, I don't have anything. Kathleen, I have two one and myself, I believe I have multiple of each. So that is another point that I need to work on. Back to you, Dean.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. I just have a few general comments on the meeting overall. Kathleen, I thought you did a great job as Toastmaster. You had very nice transitions between the speakers and the various parts of the meeting. You look like you were having a lot of fun up there, as indicated by your laughter and your wonderful laugh. I love the meeting theme. It was very appropriate. The table topics were on that theme and were nice questions that weren't too hard or too easy. I love the evaluations. Those were the two of the best evaluations I've heard in quite some time. And they were evaluations of speeches that were quite good. And yet you both found some areas that could be improved, which is really quite a challenge when you've got two good speakers. And finally, the word of the day I thought was great. I call that kind of word a Goldilocks word. It's not too hard and not too easy, which isn't quite right. Goldilocks is hot and cold, but I like words that aren't too hard or too easy because it challenges us to use them, but we actually have an opportunity to use them. So with that, I'll return the meeting back to the president, Jackie.
Thank you, Dean. This has been a super fun meeting. Very light, very joyful. I really enjoyed this. This has been a refreshing end to my very, very long day. I have much to be grateful for, as we all do. As we are sending Rob our votes for, yes, our votes for Speaker of the Night, I would ask Lloyd if there are any points of business that we need to talk about before we end.
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Fantastic. Something interesting that I wanted to mention that I noticed has been a difference from the UK groups and this group, just a little silly thing that I thought was funny and wanted to bring up is instead of yellow, they have amber. It's green and amber and red. I thought that was really fun. Does anybody else have anything they would like to share as Rob is tallying things up for us?
So we did have the club officers training on Saturday, and Vicky did a great job putting that on. Vicky, I just want to mention that to everybody. That you kept everybody on track. It was extremely well organized. So good job.
Thank you.
An amazing job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We actually had two unusual club officer trainings this year because both of them finished ahead of schedule. So Vicky has set a record, a completely unusual thing for District 9, I think. So it's going to be tough for whoever follows you in that office to equal your record.
And the Electric Toasters and Cascade Speakeasy met the requirement for officers to get that check mark for the Distinguished Club program. So kudos to all of our officers that showed up. I truly appreciate it. It's going smoothly.
Because of you, because you're a great leader.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job, Vicky. For those of you that haven't organized a large gathering and gotten it done on time, it is very hard.
Yeah.
Speaking of done on time, we're running a little bit late. So Rob, would you tell us who won for tonight?
Thank you, Madam President. Our two primary speakers this evening received votes. However, it was a landslide win in favor of our professional scuba diver. Thank you, Mary Syrie, for a wonderful speech. You are the winner this evening.
Yay! I love that speech. It's one of my favorites that you've given. It's amazing. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I'm excited I get to celebrate it. Yay! Thank you for being an amazing club. Clubs.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Thank
Jackie.
you. I appreciate
Hey,
it.
Jackie.
Thank you. I'm gonna go get some sleep.
Oh, good idea.